The tires of the McLaren Senna hissed on the rain-slicked asphalt of the private drive, a silver dart slicing through the pre-dawn gloom of New York City. Inside, Malcolm Vexley loosened his Tom Ford tie. The ghost of Isabella's perfume, a cloying, expensive jasmine still clinging to the fibers of his suit. He was exhausted, but a familiar, smug satisfaction warmed him. He ran the city, he ran the markets, and he took what he wanted. As the grand Georgian-style mansion loomed, he pictured his wife, Evelina. Pregnant, beautiful, and waiting. He'd soothe her, of course. A new diamond bracelet from Graf, a promise of a weekend in the Hamptons, and all would be forgiven. It always was. The front door of the Vexley estate, a behemoth of oak and polished brass, opened silently before Malcolm could insert his key. The family's long-serving butler, Mr. Abernathy, stood in the cavernous, marble-floored foyer, his face a mask of impenetrable professionalism. Yet something was off. The air, usually warm and scented with the fresh lilies Evelina adored, was cold, sterile. A funereal stillness had settled over the house. The grand crystal chandelier, normally blazing with a light that spoke of limitless electricity and boundless wealth, was dimmed to a somber, penitent glow. Abernathy. Malcolm said, his voice a low rumble, meant to project effortless authority. "Is Evelina asleep? I hope the storm didn't wake her." "Mrs. Vexley is waiting for you in the conservatory, sir," the butler replied, his gaze fixed on a point just over Malcolm's shoulder. The subtle refusal to make eye contact was a tectonic shift in their 15-year dynamic. "She asked not to be disturbed until your arrival." A flicker of irritation pricked at Malcolm. Evelina waiting up was never a good sign. It meant a talk, a tearful catechism of his late hours and missed dinners that he would have to patiently endure before they could return to the comfortable status quo. He squared his broad shoulders, the fabric of his bespoke suit stretching tight. He was already composing his lines, a script of corporate emergencies and unavoidable obligations. He was a master of such performances. He strode across the checkerboard marble, his handmade leather shoes echoing with an unnerving clarity in the tomb-like silence. He passed the grand staircase, where a portrait of his father, Alistair Vexley, watched his approach with painted-on disdain. Even in oil, the man was judging him. Malcolm clenched his jaw and pushed onward. The conservatory was Evelina's sanctuary, her one claim on a house that was otherwise a monument to Vexley austerity. It was a breathtaking glass dome attached to the east wing, a miniature climate-controlled jungle of exotic plants collected from their travels, or more accurately from catalogues she perused while he was on business trips. It overlooked the meticulously sculpted gardens, which were now being lashed by the storm nature's fury, mirroring the one he was about to face. Tonight, however, it felt less like a sanctuary and more like a courtroom. The air was thick with humidity and unspoken accusations. Evelina was standing by a towering fiddle-leaf fig tree, her back to the door. She wore a simple cream-colored cashmere robe that fell elegantly over her 7-month pregnant belly. It was a robe he'd bought her in Scotland on a trip that felt a lifetime ago. Her blonde hair, usually styled in perfect glossy waves, was pulled back into a severe chignon at the nape of her neck. Even from behind her posture radiated an icy stillness that was entirely alien to her warm, yielding nature. "Sarah." Malcolm began carefully modulating his voice to a tone of weary, apologetic affection. "I'm so sorry, darling. The deal with the Japanese consortium went into extra innings. They wouldn't take no for an answer. You know how it is." She didn't turn around. Her voice, when it came, was as flat and cold as the glass panes separating them from the storm. "Don't, Malcolm. Don't lie. Not anymore. I'm so tired of the lies." He stopped dead, his well-rehearsed apology dying on his lips. The bluntness of her words was a splash of cold water. "What are you talking about? It was a grueling negotiation." "Was it?" Finally, she turned. Her face was a mask of tragic composure. She was pale, her delicate features etched with a sorrow so deep it seemed to have aged her overnight. Her blue eyes, normally the color of a Santorini sky, were dark and stormy, matching the tempest outside. There were no tears. The terrifying absence of them spoke of a grief that had passed beyond weeping into a realm of hard, cold resolution. On the antique mahogany table between them, next to a wilting orchid whose petals had begun to brown, sat a single thick manila folder. It looked menacingly official. "I know where you were," she stated each word, a carefully placed stone, building a wall between them. "I know about the penthouse suite at the Carlisle, Suite 28A, the one with the view of Central Park. I know you've had a standing reservation every Tuesday and Thursday for the last 6 months. And I know about Isabella Dubois." The name hit him like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. Isabella, the fiery, ambitious vice president from Omnicorp. Their affair had been a reckless, exhilarating game of corporate and carnal conquest, a game he thought he had played with masterful discretion, a secret vice in a life of suffocating public virtue. He had underestimated his wife, grossly. "Sarah, listen to me," he said, taking a step forward, his hands raised in a universal gesture of surrender. It was a lie, of course. He was regrouping, not surrendering. It was a mistake, a meaningless diversion, an error in judgment. It has nothing to do with you and me, with our family." "Our family?" she echoed, and a bitter, humorless laugh escaped her lips. It was a sound he'd never heard from her before, and it chilled him to the bone. "Our family is built on a foundation of your meaningless diversions. This wasn't the first, Malcolm. I know about the gallery assistant in London, the ski instructor in Aspen, the wife of your board member, for God's sake. I ignored them. I told myself it was the price of being Miss Vexley. But this was different. This wasn't just a betrayal of me. It was a betrayal of our son." She gestured to the ominous folder on the table. "I hired a man. A very good one. Mr. Gable. He's far more competent than the corporate spitters you employ to ruin your competitors. He's discreet, professional, and unbelievably thorough." Malcolm's blood ran cold, then hot with rage. The sheer audacity of it. His wife, his quiet, gentle, society-approved Evelina, hiring a grubby private investigator to spy on him. It was a profound violation of the unspoken rules of their world, a violation of his control. "You had me followed. You brought a stranger into our lives, into our marriage," he demanded, his voice dropping to a growl. "You brought Isabella Dubois into our marriage first." She countered, her voice unwavering, her hand instinctively resting on the swell of her belly, as if drawing strength from it. "I was merely documenting the guests you had already invited. I had to protect my own interests, and our child's." She picked up the folder. Her hands were perfectly steady. She didn't open it to show him grainy photos or hotel receipts. He knew what would be inside. The clinical, irrefutable proof of his deception. Instead, she slid a set of thick, cream-colored documents from within the folder and placed them on top. The paper was heavy, expensive. He recognized the letterhead immediately. It was from Renford Stern and Landon, her father's law firm, the most feared litigation firm in the state. At the top of the first page, in stark, bold letters that seemed to shout in the quiet room, were the words, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." The world tilted. Malcolm stared at the papers, his mind refusing to process the reality. Divorce. The word was an absurdity, a concept for commoners and movie stars. Vexleys didn't divorce. They endured. They compartmentalized. They maintained the facade for the sake of the dynasty. The dynasty was paramount. "This is insane," he breathed, the sound swallowed by the cavernous room. "You're emotional. You're pregnant. You're not thinking clearly. We can fix this. I will end it with her. Today. It's over." "It's over, all right," Evelina agreed. "We are over. You're pregnant with my son, our son." He pleaded, the first cracks appearing in his composure. "You want to bring him into a broken home on a whim. Because I made one stupid mistake. One." She shot back, her icy control momentarily breaking to reveal the molten fury beneath. "This wasn't one mistake, Malcolm. This was 6 months of calculated deception. While I was at home, suffering through morning sickness, you were choosing wine at Daniel with her. While I was picking out colors for the nursery, you were buying her jewelry from Cartier. While I was feeling our son kick for the first time, you were in her bed. This was not a mistake. This was a choice. You chose her day after day. And now I am making my choice." Each word was a perfectly aimed dart puncturing his arrogance. He felt his composure, the bedrock of his entire existence, cracking under the assault. "You can't do this, Evelina," he said, his voice now laced with desperation. "Think of the scandal, the company, Vexley Industries. Our stock will plummet on the rumor alone. Think of our families. Your mother." My father. I have thought of everything," she interrupted coolly. "That's the difference between you and me, Malcolm. You think of the moment of gratifying your own immediate needs. I think of the future. My future. My son's future." He lunged for the papers, a primal need to physically destroy the offending documents taking over. "I won't sign them. I will never sign them. This is my son you're carrying. I'll fight you. I'll drag this out for years. I will bury you in legal fees. You'll get nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." Evelina didn't flinch at his outburst. She simply watched him, a look of profound, soul-deep pity in her eyes. It was a look that infuriated him more than her anger. "Oh, Malcolm, you poor foolish man. You still don't understand." She let the silence hang in the air, thick with the scent of damp earth and dying flowers. He stood, panting. The divorce papers clutched in his fist, his world tilting violently on its axis. Then she delivered the twist, the blow that would shatter not just their marriage, but his very identity. "I don't need you to sign them to get what I want," she said, softly, her gaze dropping to the crumpled papers in his hand, and then back to his face. "This isn't just about the divorce. This is about everything that comes with it. And according to the prenuptial agreement that your father's lawyers drafted to protect you from gold diggers, the infidelity clause is quite specific." He vaguely remembered the prenup, a fortress of legal jargon designed to protect the multi-generational Vexley fortune. He had barely glanced at it arrogantly, assuming it would only ever be a weapon for him to wield. "The clause grants me a significant settlement, of course," she continued, her voice as precise as a surgeon's scalpel. "A pittance for you, I'm sure, but more than enough for me to live comfortably. But it's the other part that should concern you. the part about moral turpitude, a proven pattern of behavior that demonstrates a character of depravity. Your father's lawyers love their dramatic flair. It has a direct impact on parental fitness and, more importantly, on corporate stewardship. She paused, letting the legal jargon sink into his panicked mind. "And here's the real problem for you, Malcolm," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, a whisper that carried the force of a hurricane. "Mr. Gable, my very thorough investigator, wasn't just looking into your affair with Ms. Dubois. He started looking into why you needed to have an affair with her, specifically. An affair with a VP from a rival company you were actively trying to acquire. He got curious. So he started looking into your accounts, the secret ones, the ones in the Cayman Islands that you use for your corporate black ops." Malcolm felt the floor drop out from under him. His blood turned to ice water. Those accounts weren't for mistresses. They were for something far more dangerous. They were the secret slush fund for Vexley Industries, the grease that kept the wheels of their global empire turning through bribes, illegal acquisitions, and hostile takeovers. It was the original sin of the Vexley fortune, a legacy of corruption managed by his father, Alistair, and recently passed down to him. Evelina saw the raw panic in his eyes, the mask of control utterly obliterated. She pressed her advantage mercilessly. "He found a payment," she said, her voice clinical. "A very large one, transferred from one of your Cayman accounts to a shell corporation registered in Panama. From there, the money was funneled to another account, one belonging to Isabella Dubois. It was $5 million, Malcolm." She took a deliberate step closer, her presence in the room suddenly immense, eclipsing his. "I don't think that was hush money, was it? Or a lover's gift? It was a payment, a fee. For what? Corporate espionage. Was she feeding you proprietary information to help you decimate her own company? Omnicorp. Did you use that information to orchestrate your hostile takeover last month?" She leaned in her face inches from his, her voice now filled with a chilling mixture of fury and revelation. "So you see, this isn't just a divorce petition. It's an indictment. You can fight me. You can try to drag my name through the mud. But the moment you do, the moment your lawyers file the first motion to contest this folder, the real folder, the one with bank statements, wire transfers, server logs, and a sworn affidavit from a very cooperative Ms. Dubois, who suddenly fears she's an accomplice to wire fraud and market manipulation. It all goes to the district attorney's office and to the SEC. She finally stood back, her devastating speech concluded. She looked at the man she had once loved, now reduced to a cornered animal, trembling and exposed. "So you have a choice," she declared, her hand resting protectively on her unborn child. "You grant me a quiet, swift divorce. You give me full custody and the settlement we both know I'm entitled to. You walk away and let me raise my son in peace. Or you can hold on to your pathetic pride, and I will burn the entire Vexley empire to the ground with you and your father in it. Your choice. You have 24 hours. With that, she turned her back on him and walked out of the conservatory, her footsteps silent on the marble floor. She left Malcolm Vexley standing amidst the wilting flora, the divorce papers in his hand, now feeling as heavy as a death sentence. The scent of jasmine had been replaced by the stench of scorched earth. The 24 hours Evelina had given him ticked away like a time bomb, wired to the foundations of his world. Malcolm didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He paced the length of the silent, cavernous penthouse, the glittering lights of Manhattan, a mocking panorama of a kingdom he was about to lose. The divorce papers lay on his antique desk, a white flag of surrender he couldn't bear to wave. His first instinct, the one honed by a lifetime of Vexley privilege and power, was to crush her, to unleash his legal team, a pack of wolves in Xenia suits who specialized in scorched earth litigation. He envisioned burying Evelina in motions, depositions, and injunctions until she begged for mercy, until she was financially and emotionally ruined. But she had outmaneuvered him with breathtaking audacity. This wasn't a fair fight. It was a hostage situation. She held the company his father, his entire legacy captive. The $5 million payment to Isabella. It was exactly as Evelina had guessed. A brilliant, brutal, and utterly illegal move to secure the Omnicorp takeover. He had felt like a master of the universe when he'd closed that deal. Now he realized he had been nothing more than a common criminal, and his wife had the receipts. His first call wasn't to his lawyer. It was to the one man more ruthless than any attorney he could hire. It was to his father. Alistair Vexley answered on the second ring from his sprawling Connecticut estate, his voice crisp and impatient, even at 6 a.m. "This had better be the most important call of your life." "It might be." Malcolm said the words, tasting like ash. "She knows," he stated, foregoing any preamble. "Evelina. She knows everything." He laid it all out, his voice a low monotone of defeat. The private investigator, the divorce, the infidelity clause, the moral turpitude. He watched as the first rays of dawn struck the spire of the Freedom Tower, a spear of light in the grey sky. When he got to the $5 million payment wired to Isabella, the line went silent for a long moment. Malcolm could picture his father's face, not showing panic, but the cold, calculating fury of a chess master whose opponent has just made an unexpected, game-changing move. "The girl was a loose end," Alistair finally said, his voice as cold and unforgiving as a winter sea. "I told you to handle her with cash untraceable. You used a wire transfer. You got sentimental sloppy." "Sentimental I was closing the biggest deal of the year." Malcolm shot back, a spark of his old fire returning. "A deal you pushed me to win at any cost." "There are costs and there are costs, boy," Alistair snarled. "You broke the cardinal rule, never give them leverage. You let the wife get the upper hand. So what does she want?" "What's the ransom?" "A quiet divorce. Full custody. The settlement from the prenup." "Give it to her," Alistair said instantly, decisively. "Cut her loose. A one-time payment is cheaper than an SEC investigation. We'll absorb the loss. Then we begin our own campaign. We'll leak a story to the Post about her having an affair with her tennis coach. We'll find a maid to say she drinks heavily. We'll paint her as an unstable, gold-digging hysteric. We'll ruin her reputation so thoroughly she won't be able to order a coffee in this town without being sneered at. By the time the custody battle comes, she'll be deemed an unfit mother, and we'll get the boy." Malcolm felt a wave of profound nausea. This was the Vexley way. Not to solve problems, but to obliterate them. To scorch the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. He thought of Evelina, of her quiet strength, her dignity, even in her pain. He thought of the child she carried, his child. To subject them to that kind of public vivisection felt monstrous. "No," Malcolm said the word, emerging from a place of deep, unfamiliar conviction. "What did you say to me?" Alistair's voice dropped to a dangerous, threatening low. "I said no." Malcolm repeated, a new resolve hardening his voice. "We are not going to destroy the mother of my son. We are not going to drag an infant through that kind of filth. There has to be another way." "You've gone soft," Alistair spat in disgust. "Fine. You want another way? Find a weakness, a pressure point. Everyone has one. The wife, the PI, the mistress. Find it and squeeze until they pop. I'll make some calls. The PI Gable, you said he'll find his license under review and a full IRS audit on his desk by noon. The girl Dubois will find her career prospects globally extinguished. We'll handle the peripherals, but you, Malcolm, you need to handle your wife. Remind her of the life she'll be giving up. The prestige, the power, the protection of our name. Remind her that the Renford name is old and respected, but the Vexley name is feared." Alistair hung up, leaving Malcolm in a silence that felt more damning than the shouting. His father's plan was clear, a campaign of intimidation and destruction. He was to handle Evelina. But as he looked at the divorce papers again, he realized Alistair didn't understand the new reality. Evelina wasn't afraid of them anymore. She had walked through the fire of his betrayal and emerged as something new, something unbreakable. Meanwhile, 20 blocks south, Evelina wasn't idle. She wasn't hiding in her parents' Sutton Place townhouse, weeping into her tea. She was in a war room. The midtown office of Renford, Stern and Landon was a fortress of mahogany leather-bound books and quiet lethal competence. With her was her father, Robert Renford, a silver-haired lion of the legal world whose calm demeanor masked a mind like a steel trap, and her older brother, Julian Renford. Julian was everything Malcolm wasn't measured empathetic, but with a fiercely protective streak that had turned into a vengeful fire the moment he learned of Evelina's plight. "Alistair's first move will be to discredit you," Julian said, pacing in front of a whiteboard covered in flowcharts and contingency plans. He had been a prosecutor before joining the family firm, and he was approaching this like building a case against a mob boss. "He'll leak a story. Page 6 will have a field day. They'll call you bitter, greedy, unstable." "Let them," Evelina said, calmly, sipping a cup of chamomile tea. Her pregnancy had given her a strange, serene focus, a clarity that cut through the noise of her emotions. The petty dramas of high society seemed meaningless now. "Our narrative is stronger. Pregnant wife leaves philandering criminal husband. That's a headline that writes itself. They can throw mud, but I'm holding a nuclear bomb. The public will side with the mother." "The PI Gable called," Robert Renford interjected, looking up from his phone with a grim smile. "As predicted, the state licensing board has suddenly opened an inquiry into his practices, citing an anonymous complaint, and the IRS has flagged his last 5 years of returns for a full audit." Evelina nodded. It was exactly what she'd expected. "Is he holding firm?" "Gable is an old day, my dear," Robert said, pride in his voice. "He's been threatened by bigger monsters than Alistair Vexley. He moved all his sensitive files, including your copies, to a secure off-site server the moment he took the case. He knew this was coming. He's clean, and he's not intimidated." The real wild card was Isabella Dubois. After Evelina's investigator had approached her, not with threats, but with a calm, clear presentation of the evidence of wire fraud and conspiracy. She was embroiled in Isabella, had been terrified. Her ambition had led her into a trap. Evelina, through her lawyers, had offered her a way out. Cooperate fully. Provide a sworn affidavit detailing Malcolm's and Vexley Industries' actions, and Renford and Stern would arrange for an immunity deal with the DA's office. The alternative was to face the wrath of the Vexleys and a federal prison sentence alone. Isabella, ambitious but not stupid, had agreed. A dedicated encrypted conference line buzzed. It was Isabella, her voice shaky and thin. "He called me," she whispered the sound, tinny and full of fear. "Malcolm, he offered me $10 million to disappear, to sign a statement saying I lied about everything that I was extorting him." "What did you tell him?" Julian asked, his voice sharp. I told him I'd think about it. I was scared. But then an hour later I got another call, a private number. A man with a thick Eastern European accent. He didn't introduce himself. He just described the route my younger sister takes to her university classes. In detail. He knew her schedule, her favorite coffee shop. Then he said, "Accidents happen to careless people," and hung up. A cold silence fell over the room. They had anticipated legal and financial pressure, not this, not the crude thuggery of gangsters. This was Alistair's signature. "Isabella," Evelina said, her voice a calm anchor in the storm of fear. "Listen to me very carefully. You and your sister are in danger. We anticipated this might be a possibility. We have a private security team. They are 10 minutes from your apartment. They will escort you both to a secure corporate apartment we have arranged. Do not talk to anyone else. Do not open your door. We will protect you." After the call ended, Julian slammed his fist on the mahogany table. "This is Alistair. This has his stench all over it. He's not just trying to discredit you, Sarah. He's trying to bury the evidence by intimidating a federal witness. This is a new felony." Evelina looked at her father, her calm demeanor hardening into steel. "This changes things. The threat against Isabella proves their state of mind. It proves they will go to any lengths to conceal the primary crime. We can't just hold this as leverage anymore." Robert Renford nodded slowly, his expression grim. "I agree. A threat against a federal witness takes this to a new level. It's time to stop playing defense. It's time to launch a preemptive strike." He looked at Julian. "Leak the photo." Back in his penthouse, Malcolm was trying to piece together a counterattack, but he was flying blind. His usual weapons, money, influence, fear, were proving ineffective. He tried calling Isabella again, but the number was disconnected. He knew what that meant. Either she'd taken his money and run, or Evelina had gotten to her and neutralized her. His phone buzzed. It was his head of security, a terse, former Mossad agent named Kobe. "Sir, we have a problem, a significant data breach." "What are you talking about?" Malcolm demanded. "Our corporate servers are impenetrable." "It's not corporate, sir. It's personal. Photos, videos from your personal cloud account, the private one you linked to your phone." Malcolm's heart hammered against his ribs. The account held personal photos, vacation snaps, but also more compromising material. Photos of him and Isabella. Selfies taken in the Carlisle suite, champagne in hand. Careless, arrogant digital trophies of his conquest. He had thought them secure, hidden behind layers of passwords. "Who has them?" Malcolm gritted out, a cold dread creeping up his spine. "We don't know the source of the breach, but we know where they've been sent." Kobe said, his voice grave. "To every major news outlet in the city. The Times, the Post, the Journal Gawker, TMZ. All of them. They were sent from an anonymous encrypted email address 30 minutes ago. The subject line was, 'The real Malcolm Vexley.'" Malcolm sank into his chair, the phone slipping from his grasp. This wasn't his father's clumsy, thuggish style. This wasn't a page 6 leak planted with a friendly editor. This was a surgical strike, precise, devastating, and designed for maximum public humiliation. Alistair wanted to paint Evelina as unstable. She had just painted him as a lecherous, cheating pig for the entire world to see. He knew, with a sickening, gut-wrenching certainty, who was behind it. Evelina hadn't just hired a PI to find dirt. She had hired a hacker to steal the shovel. The game had escalated. The armies were no longer just gathering. They were marching. And Evelina Renford Vexley had just fired the first deafening cannon shot, proving that the quiet, graceful woman he thought he knew was gone, replaced by a strategist every bit as ruthless and calculating as the men she was fighting. The 24-hour deadline had been a smokescreen. Her war had already begun. The world imploded in slow motion. By 9 a.m., Malcolm's face was on every gossip website, a sleazy, smug selfie of him, and a triumphant-looking Isabella champagne in hand, the opulent suite of the Carlyle unmistakable in the background. Other photos less explicit, but equally damning, followed. The story wasn't just about infidelity. It was about a gross abuse of power, a powerful CEO seducing a subordinate from a rival company. The narrative Evelina had crafted was masterful. He wasn't a straying husband. He was a corporate predator who used women as tools. The board of Vexley Industries convened an emergency meeting via teleconference. Malcolm patched in his face a grim mask. The stock, which had opened steady, was now in free fall. The company's veteran PR chief, a man who had spun gold out of scandals for decades, was speechless. He issued a terse, no comment, which in the court of public opinion was tantamount to a full confession. Before the call ended, Malcolm was told, not asked, to stay home and make no public statements. He was radioactive. He was a prisoner in his own gilded cage, the ringing of his phone a constant tormenting reminder of his disgrace. He ignored the furious calls from board members, the sanctimonious texts from supposed friends, and the endless barrage from opportunistic journalists. The only call he was waiting for was from his father. When it finally came, Alistair's voice was not shouting. It was a low, volcanic rumble, the sound of pressure building deep beneath the earth. "You have become a liability," Alistair seethed. "A laughing stock. Our name, the name my grandfather built from nothing, is the punchline on morning television. You let her do this to you. To our name." "She hacked me," Malcolm yelled back, his voice raw with desperation and humiliation. "This is beyond anything we anticipated. This is cyber warfare." "Anticipated?" Alistair laughed, a dry, rattling sound completely devoid of humor. "I anticipated this the moment you said she'd hired an investigator. I told you to crush her. I told you to obliterate her. Instead, you hesitated. You felt pity. And now your pity has cost this family billions in market value and invited the scrutiny of the entire world." The SEC made an informal inquiry this morning. They smelled the blood in the water. Malcolm felt a chill that had nothing to do with the penthouse's air conditioning. The SEC, the boogeyman of their world. What do we do? What's the plan? There is no we. There is only the problem and the solution, Alistair said coldly. The problem is the evidence Evelina has, the wire transfers, the girl's testimony. As long as that exists, we are vulnerable. So we make it disappear. What are you talking about? We can't get to Isabella. Evelina has her locked down tighter than Fort Knox. I'm not talking about the girl, Alistair clarified, his voice dropping ominously. I'm talking about the source, the reason for the payment. That deal, the takeover of Omnicorp. It needs to be sanitized. We need to erase the crime itself from history. Malcolm's mind raced, trying to comprehend the sheer audacity of what his father was proposing. Sanitize the deal. That deal was already done. The assets absorbed the paperwork filed with federal regulators. How the records are filed, the money has moved. I have already initiated the protocol, Alistair explained, as if discussing a routine maintenance check on a yacht. Our offshore team in Geneva and Panama is creating a new narrative, a backdated paper trail. It will show that the $5 million was not a payment for corporate espionage, but a legitimate finder's fee paid to a third-party consultant based in Liechtenstein, who then, for his own reasons, paid Ms. Dubois. It's messy, it's expensive, but it's defensible. It muddies the water enough to create reasonable doubt. A third-party consultant. Who? Malcolm asked, bewildered. A man who exists only on paper. A ghost in the machine. A convenient phantom who will take the fall and then vanish into the digital ether once his purpose is served. This was the dark heart of the Vexley machine. Not just a company, but a shadow state with its own army of accountants and lawyers capable of rewriting history. It was brilliant, audacious, and so deeply illegal it made Malcolm's head spin. It involved forgery, obstruction of justice, and conspiring to defraud the United States government. But it will take time. Alistair continued, his voice hardening again. And in that time, you need to be seen as the victim. This is your new story. Your wife has launched this vicious smear campaign because you discovered she was unfaithful and you asked for a divorce. You were heartbroken. The affair with the Dubois girl was a desperate, lonely mistake made by a shattered man. She's 7 months pregnant, Father. No one on earth will believe that. They'll believe what we pay them to believe. Alistair roared, his control finally snapping. We will find a doctor to question the timeline of the pregnancy. We will sow doubt. We will turn you into the wronged party. We will make Evelina Renford a pariah. Malcolm listened, his stomach churning, with a mixture of horror and awe at his father's depravity. To protect themselves, his father was willing to question the paternity of his own grandchild. To brand Evelina not just an adulteress, but a liar carrying another man's child. It was a line so dark, so vile, he never imagined even his father would cross it. The raw, primal instinct to protect his unborn son warred with a lifetime of conditioning to protect the family name at any cost. In the Renford and Stern war room, the atmosphere was electric. The photo leak had worked perfectly, seizing control of the public narrative and forcing the Vexleys onto the defensive. Now it was time for Phase 2. Alistair is panicking, Julian said, pointing to a screen displaying Vexley Industries' plummeting stock price. He's not a strategist. He's a bully. And bullies panic when the victim punches back. He'll do something rash and stupid. He's already manufacturing a cover story, Evelina said. She sat at the head of the table, a queen surveying her battlefield. He'll try to create a firewall between the $5 million and the Omnicorp deal. He'll invent a middleman, a consultant, a cutout. He'll forge documents to make it look legitimate. Robert Renford looked at his daughter, a deep, profound respect in his eyes. How can you be so certain of his exact strategy? Because that's what he did 10 years ago with the Argentinian mining deal, Evelina replied coolly. I was a newlywed, eager to understand the family business I had married into. I used to read the annual reports, the shareholder summaries, the press clippings. I remember a scandal, accusations of bribery to secure mining rights. It was a big story for a week, and then it just disappeared. The official story became that a rogue contractor had acted alone. The contractor was never found. The pattern is the same. Alistair doesn't innovate. He just repeats his past successes. She had been a silent observer for years, the beautiful passive wife, the perfect hostess. No one had ever suspected she was also a student memorizing their playbook, identifying their weaknesses. He thinks I only have the evidence from Mr. Gable. Evelina continued, a grim smile touching her lips. He thinks this is a fight about one corrupt deal, but he's wrong. She turned to her brother. Julian, it's time. Julian nodded grimly. He unlocked a reinforced briefcase and pulled out a slim encrypted hard drive, handling it as if it were radioactive. When Sarah first came to me 6 months ago, after she found a suspicious charge on the Amex bill, she knew it wasn't enough just to prove the affair. She had to prove the rot went to the core. So we looked for someone on the inside. He slid the drive across the table. We found him, a senior accountant in the legacy division at Vexley Industries, a man named Arthur Finch. Alistair passed him over for CFO 10 years ago in favor of a younger, more compliant sycophant. Arthur has been with the company for 30 years. He's a bitter, overlooked man with a photographic memory and an obsession with keeping personal records. His bitterness was our opportunity. Evelina's plan had been far more intricate than just catching Malcolm in the act. The affair was merely the trigger, the public justification for a war she had been planning for nearly a year. Arthur Finch had become her secret weapon. For months he had been feeding information to Julian, making encrypted copies of files from the company's archives, not just of the Omnicorp deal, but of everything. Decades of creative accounting offshore entities, buried scandals. The Argentinian mining deal, a suppressed environmental disaster in Indonesia that had poisoned a village. A trail of corporate malfeasance that led directly, irrefutably, to Alistair Vexley. The drive contains Alistair's entire legacy of corruption, Evelina said. The original sin of the Vexley fortune, as you called it, Father. It's the real leverage. The threat to the DA was a feint to make them panic. This is the kill shot. Malcolm, blissfully unaware of the sword of Damocles hanging over his entire family, was spiraling. His father's plan to frame Evelina and delegitimize his own son felt vile. For the first time, the Vexley way felt not just ruthless, but truly evil. He found himself looking at the crumpled divorce papers on his desk, not with anger, but with a strange, horrifying clarity. Evelina wasn't just leaving him. She was escaping a sinking, toxic ship. His personal phone, the one not besieged by the media, rang. It was an unknown number. He answered, expecting another of his father's lieutenants. Malcolm. The voice was soft, hesitant, but unmistakable. It was Evelina. He was so stunned he couldn't speak. Don't talk, she said quickly, her voice low and urgent. Just listen. I know what your father is planning. I know he's in Geneva fabricating documents to cover the Omnicorp deal. I know he wants you to go on television and claim I was unfaithful to claim that our baby isn't yours. Malcolm's blood ran cold. How could she possibly know that the conversation with his father had been on a secure line? Did she have his penthouse bugged? Was her reach that long? He's lying to you, Malcolm, she continued, her voice pressing on a strange mix of pity and warning. He's not just trying to save the company. He's trying to save himself. The Omnicorp deal was never your idea. It was his from the start. You were just the face of it. He pushed you into the deal. He pushed you towards Isabella. He knew you'd be reckless. He was counting on it. He set you up. What? Why? Malcolm stammered his mind, reeling, unable to grasp the scale of the betrayal. Because he needed a distraction, a big, noisy public scandal. Something to draw all the attention, to have the media and the regulators looking at you while he was burying something much, much worse. Ask him, Malcolm. If you have the courage, ask him about the real reason he needed Omnicorp's technology. Ask him about Project Nightingale. The line went dead. Project Nightingale. The name meant nothing to him, a code name for a deal he wasn't privy to. He was the chief operating officer of Vexley Industries, the heir apparent. He was supposed to know everything. The realization crashed down on him. Alistair had been running a shadow company within their own company. Alistair had set him up, used his own son as a sacrificial lamb to create a media firestorm that would act as chaff, distracting from a much larger, darker crime. The affair, the public humiliation, it was all part of Alistair's grand, monstrous design. Evelina's attack hadn't been an attack at all. It had been a reaction to a trap she saw being laid for him. The rage that filled Malcolm was pure and white-hot. It wasn't the petulant anger of a man who'd been caught. It was the elemental fury of a son betrayed by his father. The carefully constructed world of Vexley loyalty and dynasty shattered into a million pieces around him. He stormed through the penthouse, grabbing his car keys. He had to see his father. He had to look him in the eye and demand the truth. As he reached the door, his personal phone buzzed with a message from an unsaved number. It was a single image, a sonogram, a grainy black and white picture of the child at the center of this maelstrom. Beneath it, a simple line of text from Evelina. He has your chin. Don't let your father take your son from you before you've even met him. The image broke through his rage, grounding him in a way nothing else could. This wasn't about the company anymore. It wasn't about stocks or deals or reputations. It was about the sins of the father and the future of the son. Evelina hadn't just given him a warning. She had given him a choice. He could continue to be his father's pawn, a disposable piece in a sick game, or he could finally become his own man, his son's father. He left the penthouse not to confront Alistair in a fit of blind rage, but with the cold, deadly purpose of a man who finally understood the real war he was in. And he knew with terrifying certainty that his only potential ally was the woman he had just betrayed. The drive to Alistair Vexley's Connecticut estate was a crucible of fury. The web of lies he had inhabited, family loyalty, dynastic duty, had been torn away, leaving only the raw, ugly truth of his father's betrayal. Malcolm wasn't just angry. He was reborn in the fire of that knowledge. He found Alistair in his baronial study, a room of dark wood and the suffocating smell of power. His father was on the phone, a portrait of calm command, directing his shadow army to rewrite history. Alistair motioned for him to wait, but Malcolm's patience was gone. He walked to the desk and stood there, silent, and radiating a cold fury that finally made his father end the call. "Good," Alistair said, mistaking his son's stillness for resolve. "You've pulled yourself together. I've already planted a story with the journal. It paints you as a man manipulated by an unstable wife." Malcolm ignored the tumbler of scotch his father offered. "What is Project Nightingale?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Alistair's composure flickered for a fraction of a second. "A minor R&D initiative. It doesn't concern you." "Don't lie to me," Malcolm's voice sliced through the air. Evelina knows the name. The Omnicorp takeover was never about market share. It was about their AI surveillance software. That's Nightingale, isn't it? A program so dirty you were willing to sacrifice your own son to create a smokescreen. Alistair rose, his towering frame exuding the menace that had controlled Malcolm his entire life. I did what was necessary to protect this family, to protect the Emma that will be yours. You showed weakness, so I used your weakness as a tool. We survive, at any cost. So it's true. Malcolm breathed the confirmation, a blow to the chest. My disgrace was just the cost of doing business for you. A calculated risk. Alistair corrected his voice, dripping with contempt. One that would have been unnecessary if you had the spine to control your own house. In that moment, Malcolm saw his father with perfect clarity. A tyrant so consumed by power, he would burn his own kin to keep his throne. The lifetime of fear he held for this man curdled into pure disgust. Evelina has everything, Malcolm said, savoring the words that would end his father's reign. And I don't mean just the Omnicorp deal. She has it all. The Argentinian mine, the Java Sea disaster. 30 years of your filth handed to her by a man named Arthur Finch. The blood drained from Alistair's face. The name Arthur Finch was a ghost, a discarded servant he never imagined would have the power to haunt him. She has an encrypted hard drive, father. Malcolm continued, pressing his advantage. Her finger is on the button. The moment you move against her, she sends it all to the Department of Justice. It's not just the SEC, it's racketeering. It's decades in prison. Checkmate. Alistair sank into his chair, the magnificent posture crumbling, the illusion of power vanishing. He looked small and old. What does she want? He whispered, the fight gone from his voice. She doesn't want to destroy the company. Malcolm said, the answer hanging in the air. She wants to cleanse it. The negotiation took place in a closed-off wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, surrounded by the silent, judging eyes of ancient history. Evelina was there, a serene and powerful figure, flanked by her father and brother. Malcolm stood alone, the bridge between the two worlds. Alistair was not present. His reign was over. Here are my terms, Evelina stated, her voice clear and steady in the vast gallery. They are not negotiable. What followed was not a negotiation, but a surrender dictated with surgical precision. First, Alistair Vexley would immediately resign from the board, citing health reasons. His entire share portfolio would be placed into a blind trust for his grandchild, Alexander Renford Vexley. He was to have no further influence over the company. Ever. Second, Malcolm would publicly accept full responsibility for the affair and the divorce. A formal, unequivocal apology drafted by Evelina's team would be issued to her and the shareholders. Third, the divorce would be swift and quiet. Evelina would receive her full settlement and sole physical custody of their son. Malcolm's visitation rights would be contingent on his unwavering cooperation. Fourth, Malcolm would become CEO of a reformed Vexley Industries, but his power would be checked by a new independent ethics committee on the board. The chair of that committee, holding the deciding vote, would be Julian Renford. The company would self-report the Omnicorp crime dismantle project Nightingale and accept the legal and financial consequences. Finally, the hard drive containing Alistair's legacy of corruption would be held in escrow by Robert Renford. It was a permanent insurance policy. If the terms were ever violated, the drive would be sent to the authorities. It was a total surrender, but it was also a lifeline. Evelina wasn't burning the empire down. She was forcing a hostile takeover of its morality. Malcolm looked at the woman he had so grievously underestimated. He could fight for the scraps of his father's corrupt legacy or build something new from the ashes. It wasn't a choice at all. "I agree." Malcolm said the words, sealing his father's fate and his own future. "I agree to all of it." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal and corporate triage. Alistair vanished from public life, a ghost in his own mansion. Malcolm's ascension, coupled with a shockingly frank corporate apology, sent ripples through the financial world. It was unprecedented. He and Evelina did not reconcile. The trust and love were casualties of a war they had both in their own ways won. Their interactions were crisp and professional, a new fragile respect growing from the wreckage of their marriage. He saw her strength, and she saw his capacity for change. 3 months later, Evelina gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Alexander Renford Vexley, a name representing not a union, but a new foundation built on a brutal truth. In the quiet hospital suite, Malcolm looked at his son sleeping in Evelina's arms. He saw his own chin, as she had promised. He looked at Evelina, her face softened by motherhood, and finally understood the depth of his failure and the scale of her victory. She hadn't just divorced him. She had saved him. She had saved their son from the poison of the Vexley legacy. "He's beautiful," Malcolm said softly. "Yes," Evelina replied, her eyes on their child. "He is. And he will grow up knowing what it means to be a good man. We will make sure of it." Their marriage was over, but their partnership in business and in parenthood was just beginning. It was not a love story, but something more resilient, a treaty signed on a battlefield, a promise to build a better kingdom for the heir they both served. What a journey. We started with the ultimate betrayal, a billionaire, a mistress, and a wife at her breaking point. But what unfolded was so much more than a simple affair. It was a war for a dynasty. We saw Evelina transform from a victim into a master strategist, proving that true power isn't about wealth, but about courage and conviction. We saw Malcolm forced to confront the sins of his father and choose between a corrupt legacy and an uncertain future. This wasn't just a story of divorce. It was a story of rebirth. An empire was brought to its knees not by an outside force, but from within, by a woman who refused to be a casualty. Do you think Evelina's actions were justified? Was her plan a cold-hearted revenge plot, or a necessary act to protect her child? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were captivated by this tale of high-stakes drama and intricate twists, please show your support by hitting that like button. Sharing this video with someone who loves a story of powerful karma, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more millionaire dramas that feel just like real life. Click that notification bell so you don't miss the next story.